was thinking back to last week's gospel about Martha and Mary, and how Mary, Jesus said, had the better part for sitting at the feet of Jesus and listening to him. So it kind of made me wonder, so why is that the better part? Why is it that not just doing good things for Jesus, as good as they are, like Martha, is still, it pales in comparison to just being with Jesus or being close? What does that mean? And what does that look like for us? What are we supposed to do with that? And I actually think that all of our readings today actually unpack that some more for us. Why that's the better part. I actually think it starts with our second reading from Colossians. When we hear that through our baptism, we were buried with Christ and then raised with Christ. So we're with Christ. We're united to him. He brings us into himself, into relationship with him. That we're united and grafted onto the Lord through our baptism. And that with this, the Lord, as we hear in Colossians, he brings us forgiveness, and he removes obstacles, and he brings us to life. I think that's the reality that we walk in, that we can pray in, that it draws us to the Lord who wants us to draw close. In our first reading from Genesis, it's right after last week's reading from Genesis. So God is troubled, suffice it to say, by all this going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, and he says, I got to go down there and check this out. I gotta figure out what's going on down there. Now, of course, he's God. He already knows what's going on. But again, I think that shows that God wants to come close. He wants to be involved in our lives and to help, root out what's not good. And that's what he was hoping to do in those towns, but of course we have to be receptive to that, but he wants to be there. And we see then, too, with Abraham and his line of questioning. Will you wipe out the whole town for 50 good people? What about 40? What about 30? Things that I've been reading kind of indicate that he's not bargaining as much as he's being inquisitive. He really is trying to figure out, who God is, what's his mind, what's his heart for his people. And it shows, too, that God can handle our questions. So we should bring our questions to the Lord and to continue to press in on what we're looking for. Now, for Abraham, it wasn't just a theoretical thing about what was going to happen with Sodom and Gomorrah, because if you remember, his nephew lived there, and his nephew's wife and their two daughters. Turns out God was willing to spare the town for 10. There was only 4. But Abraham, he brings the needs of his heart because it's personal to him, what happens there. And of course, God is willing to engage. Just like all you parents out there, how many billions of questions do you get every day at a certain stage in life from your kids? Then how much more is the Lord willing to handle what we bring him? In our gospel, Jesus is at prayer, and his disciples say, Lord, teach us to pray. And he does. So he's actually there to help us in this relationship, to help us in this closeness, this communication. He desires that. Of course, we know he says, when you pray, say, Father. So there's a familial relationship. Again, we're brought into the family of God. And that Jesus actually wants us to have the same relationship that he does with the Father. And that's our identity as children of God. And so we can come close to God, praying in that simplicity, but in the sincerity and intimacy of a child with a parent. And that he's going to bring us what we need, spiritually and, materially. So Jesus says to seek, to ask, to knock. I was struck in that parable where he kind of has that one guy say, do not bother me. Maybe that's sometimes our temptation even with the Lord. Like, I don't want to bother him. Maybe I bother him too much. We're never a bother to God. He wants us, as we hear it, to ask, to seek, to knock. And the one who asks receives. And the one who seeks finds. The one who knocks, the door will be open. Maybe not in the way we want. Maybe not in the time that we want. But God's never give anything that's harmful for us. But it's also always going to provide what we need. And so we can have this attitude of trust in the Lord. Even asking our prayers of petition is an act of faith, because it shows that there's a God who we believe in, and that we believe that this God cares enough about our prayers to want to hear them, and then this God can actually do something about it. Otherwise, why would we even bother? But it's an act of faith and love and trust in God to even bring our prayers to him. And we hear that he desires that. It's a way of continuing our relationship, our walk with the Lord, to make use of that closeness in our lives. And ultimately, this all comes together here at Mass. When what we put on the altar represents us and everything that we bring, so we should be bringing something to the Mass. All of our thanks and praise, but our concerns, the people and situations on our mind and heart that we want to pray for, and we put them on the altar, knowing that the Lord's going to receive them and praying that he transform them, just like he transforms bread and wine for the good. So as we encounter Christ here in the Mass today, let us remember the goodness of the fact that he desires us to be close, to be with him, to pour out our hearts to him, to share life with him, as he looks so much to share his life with us.